All right. Damn. Well, that's hopefully that's live. All right. إن الحمد لله وكفاه والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد. السلام الله على القوم. أهلا وسهلا بكم ومرحبا. Bienvenidos a todos.欢迎来自 Bakhair Ragle, Khushamadid, people, Khushamadid, and of course, Swagatam. So, I apologize, given my own punctuality standards, but today, boy, technology, what can we say? Technology. That, in case you're wondering, is still my my couch. My resting couch, people, my resting couch. So, right, I'm just trying to set this because I've got it on YouTube live as well. Acha. Since it's live, I think I should give the Molajat Tash a little twirl. Right, so what's going on, people? What is going on? God, it's so hot today. Ya salam. Ya salam. This, you see, it's not normal in the UK for it to be this hot. So you gotta understand our predicament. First world problems, people. First world problems. Right, so ahlan wa sahlan bikum. Right, those of you just tuning in, you can click like, click share. It is running live on YouTube as well. I'm taking questions as always, people. As always, Q&A. I've restricted the questions to Facebook because it's much easier to kind of just take them from one place. All right. ¿Qué tal? What's going on? Wa alaikum assalam. So it's much easier. So if you are on Facebook, you can log into Facebook and post your questions from there. That will most likely make things a hell of a lot easier than to try and tackle YouTube. And it's muy complicado. Es muy complicado, people. Es muy complicado. So what is going on? What is it that is bothering the people? What's up, mi gente? What's up, man? What are some of the questions are coming straight in. Ya salam. Yunus, Ayub, what does Noon in Surah Al-Qalam mean? What does Noon in Surah? Oh, ya salam. I haven't even shared this from my other. Toba. How do I blaspheme? That I haven't even shared my own life. What is going on? Right, so un momento, people. Feel free to post your questions whilst I just click share on this. Right, so I'm just doing that, people. Just doing that. Right, okay. We're in. All these extra security passwords here. करना पड़ता है यार, करना पड़ता है. It's the demand. जनता की demand है. You know, this day and age, people. You know, if you don't have a password on your phone, then you only have yourself to blame. You know, the mobile phone is the number one cause for it is the number one cause for all kinds of catastrophes of our age, people, for all kinds. Somebody said, oh, I don't like your mustache. Yaar, kya karte ho yaar? I don't like your mustache. Yaar, yaar, why are there so many haters in this world? यार ये प्यार करने वाले कहाँ हैं? Where are those who love? Yeah. In the Quran, why does Allah tell the Prophet to tell the people the scripture to refer to their what? To refer to their if they have been corrupted. Right, so this ties into a question which I've answered previously on, do we believe that the Torah, the previous scriptures, Jewish scriptures or the Israelite scriptures and the Bible? Oh, yes, salam, is that me? All right, so do we feel that the Bible and the Torah and these things have been corrupted? Now, first of all, just to clarify, many people may be surprised that this is a little footnote, if you like. The Torah is not the scripture that was revealed to Moses, Musa alayhi salam. The Torah is a combination, it's of scriptures. Okay, so it's perhaps like saying the Jewish Bible. Okay, not all of those books were revealed to Moses. So in the Quran, to be specific, Allah never says in the Quran that we gave Moses the Torah, but rather that we gave him the book, or we gave him revelation, or we gave him the Furqan, or we gave him the criterion, but he never says we gave him the Torah. So the Torah was to Bani Israel, so it includes the message of Moses and many others that come after him. So Allah does speak about the Torah and Bani Israel, but he doesn't say it was Musa alayhi salam who received the Torah. Now, so I'm not saying that the message of Moses was not a part of the Torah. It was a part, but it's not the Torah. Okay, just to be specific. So you understand that in the Torah, you will see the rulings, like God mentioning that, and we mentioned in that وَكَتَبْنَا فِيهَا, and in it, in the Torah, it was written that النَّفْسُ بِالنَّفْسِ وَالْعَيْنُ بِالْعَيْنِ, that a soul for a soul and an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. I'm sure you're familiar with these laws. These laws were revealed much after Moses, because these are the laws that the Israelites became acquainted with once they were in captivity, and the generations that ensued under the rule or in Babylon. So whilst they lived in Babylon, the century that they spent there in captivity, and then maybe some of them that weren't captives, but they lived there. So the law of Hammurabi, it mentions this. In fact, it's the actual wording of the law of Hammurabi, which predates Moses. So you'll see that the text, not text, but the kind of the clay tablets that have been found with the law of Hammurabi and these things, and the Epic of Gilgamesh, and these that date to almost 4,000 years ago. These had these very laws coded with that specificity. So it mentioned that a life for a life, and an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth, word for word. It is exactly what is then the scripture of the Torah, and then the Quran quotes that. So it couldn't have been from the time of Moses, because at that time the Israelites hadn't crossed over and established the kingdom of Israel, and they hadn't then later on been taken into captivity and spent several hundreds of years in Babylon, where they did. So just to clarify, okay, so you guys have a better understanding. This also ties into an important question, which is, what is the Sharia? What is the Sharia? And this is why you will see, and that's something I'd like to come back to in a moment, but just to answer this question. So you'll see that the Sharia is simply a solution to people's problems based on their surroundings. Okay, so it's not something that is alien to the people. It won't be alien to them. Okay, so because I've been asked about this recently, that people had questioned me on a few occasions, that what do we believe about the Sharia? Is the Sharia sacred and holy? And that's a deep discussion in and of itself. So what we can say is that although the Sharia has come, Sharia simply means your rules and laws. Now, the laws were never meant to be static. They were meant to reflect the needs of the people. To state that the laws today must be static, as they were 1400 years ago, but then to acknowledge that, by the way, all the laws prior to that were always changing, makes very little sense. Okay, so Allah says that that we made for all of these prophets and these people, and there were countless prophets, shir'atan wa minhaja. لِكُلٍّ جَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ شِرْعَةً وَمِنْهَاجًا, that we placed for each and every one a different kind of rule and law. And that makes no sense if Allah was trying to seek out a sacred law, because then Allah would have had just one law. There would just be one law for everybody for all time. And if the laws are always changing for all the prophets, and there's countless prophets, by the way, countless. So if the laws are changing for them, then it makes no sense to say that this law would be static now. And even though 1,000 years would go by and it would still be always static. I mean, the underpinning themes will be static. So Allah says that إِنَّمَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ, that really all that Allah is commanding you about is يَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ. He simply commands you to justice and kindness. وَإِيتَاءِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى, and humanitarian efforts that you give to people who are less fortunate, that you maintain good ties. That is it. That is the summary of all the ahkam in Islam. Now, their manifestations will continue to evolve and change with the day and age and with people's needs. So as Umar ibn Abdul Aziz said, that تحدث للناس قضايا بقدر ما أحدثوا. Right. So that people's rules will always continue to occur, continue to be renewed, that so long as they continue to innovate and develop. Okay, so yeah, so just to clarify that, and this is actually a I feel anyway the source of a great misunderstanding, because once you understand that, you realize there isn't really this, God isn't trying to get you into some kind of political power, because there is no sacred system per se. The system is simply a human system. And I refer to this as the Kintsugi hypothesis. Now people are going to say, yaar, ye kaun sa naya masla chhed diya. The Kintsugi hypothesis, people, the Kintsugi. Remember that. So what do I mean by the Kintsugi hypothesis? Right. One, the problem is I speak in too many in too much terminologies. यार technical बहुत हो जाता हूँ यार. This is the problem, I get too technical. So, to understand the Kintsugi hypothesis, I need you to buy my book. That's called marketing, people. So the Sharia, according to me, is explained by what I call understood by the Kintsugi hypothesis. Now this, ladies and gentlemen, muchachas y muchachos, this is the ancient Japanese art. I need you to pay attention. This is the art of where you salvage a broken dish or bowl or glass or cup. You salvage usually a piece of pottery, a kind of utility that you salvage by joining it from the cracks, but with a kind of precious lacquer. So the kind of cracks that you put, usually golden kind of lacquer, is used to fix that that broken utensil, whatever it is. And this in and of itself is an art. It's an amazing art. It stems from the Japanese philosophy of wabi-sabi. I'm not making this up, yet. When I say these things, maybe you might think that is Mufti just making this stuff up right there. Besides spending all my time watching TV series, I do occasionally read as well, people. So there is an amazing Japanese philosophy called wabi-sabi. Not the wabi, not the wobbler wabi. Wabi. This is wabi. This one, wabi-sabi. This is true, by the way. I'm not making this up. So the philosophy of wabi-sabi, it refers to seeing beauty in frailty, in decay, in broken kind of aspects of life. Why? Because these things are human, all too human. These are, and they can be beautiful from a perspective. You see, because the old Eurocentric way of seeing beauty is all about symmetry, and it's about attempted perfection. But the Japanese philosophy of wabi-sabi, of our wobbler brothers, wabi-sabi. So in wabi-sabi, they saw beauty in imperfections. And that's an amazing philosophy in and of itself. But from there, you get this kintsugi, the art of kintsugi, of fixing with gold broken items. Now, this this kintsugi hypothesis is by what I explain the Sharia to be. The Sharia, in its essence, people, is taking the broken, the frail, fragile, hurt circumstances of human beings in their social environments, and then mending them, joining them, fixing them with a precious lacquer. That kintsugi is how we understand the Sharia. So the Sharia is beautiful from that perspective, that you have this kind of this piece of art in front of you, but it is in essence human broken problems that it is taking and fixing. It is not something holy in the sense that it's introducing a whole new divine kind of alien rules. It's not. It's taking a broken human society, using their solutions and providing them with a response and with some parameters. That's what the Sharia is. Now you can understand why I said I explain it by the Kintsugi hypothesis. All right, people. You probably thought when I said that Mufti is about to do another. Is this a blag? Is this from the Balaghat? You know, Imam Malik would often say, Balagani, that it has reached me. Balagha in Arabic means to reach. So where Imam Malik presents a hadith, but he doesn't mention the chain and he just goes direct. These are called the balagh. The balaghs of Imam Malik, the balaghat. So just in case you thought I was doing a balag, obviously with a different context today, like some people, they do balaghat. So this was not a balaghat. And you could from that also say it's perhaps some of these people who do these blags, maybe they've misunderstood the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who said, "Ballighu anni," that do balag on my behalf, as in when representing my words. But this didn't mean blag, as some of these Maulvis have started to blag. That's not what the hadith meant, that ballighu anni, that blag, it meant balag. So it's understanding में misunderstanding हो गई. होता है यार. It happens at times. You know, there's usually an understanding, sometimes there's a misunderstanding. Right, so what else is bothering the precious people of Facebook? Mi gente, what's going on? Luqman is saying, be true to yourself. Video, can you end this live with a similar motivational message? Oof. We'll have to see. We'll have to see, people. You know, sometimes you have to be in the right mood. You have to be in the right element. And then the words, they have to come from the heart. Dil se jo baat nikalti hai, asar rakhti hai. In the words of Allama Iqbal, that the words that they come from the heart, they impact the heart. Par nahi taqat-e parwaz magar rakhti hai. The words may not have wings, but they are capable of flight. Allah, Allah, Allah. Right, so what else is going on? Mufti, you have a clip on wearing gold and silk for men. There is a narration where the Prophet holds gold and Ummah and says this. Was there a fault? I've explained all of that. You see, the interesting thing is you've watched my clip, yet not watched my clip. Yaar, dukh hota hai. You know the Buddhist concept, dukkha. There's dukkha in this world, dukkha. There's just sorrows, and that's what I get afflicted by when I hear these things, that you watch my clips, but yet you don't watch them. It's dukkha, people, dukkha. You need to rewatch my clips. Otra vez. So, ves y otra vez, time and time again, people. So in there, I actually explained my understanding of the hadith, that yes, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if he said that, what he was trying to refer to, this was simply an encouragement to stay away from a culture that was quite alien to the Arabs. You have to understand that. You see, the mistake people make today is they want to think about Islam. They want to think about the lifetime of the Prophet, about the companions. They want to think about these things. Right, I'm live again. There's subtle connectivity issue. I was actually worried that there may have been an issue. I was on the phone today for hours, god damn, almost 2 hours to the internet provider, Virgin, a nightmare. They duped me into switching broadband providers, and now they've been playing up and they've been impossible to get hold of. So I've been assured that hopefully things will be fixed tomorrow. So I was in two minds about postponing today's session, but I thought, tawakkulan ala Allah, let's do it. So hopefully it'll be okay. Right. Must be some native. I don't see it as disrespect. I don't know what that's talking about. No lo sé. I don't know, people. La adri. What are some questions? Yeah, so the thing I was trying to explain is you have to understand the background of where the Prophet ﷺ was speaking from. Okay? And I would really advise anybody who's serious about Islam. You see, Muslims are of two kinds, people. Since I'm giving you terminologies, I'll give you a few more. Muslims in my book are of two kinds. There's Muslim with a capital M and Muslim with a regular M. Allah. People, I'm taking you into the mind of a Mufti here. So bear with me. You see, all Muslims and some maybe people who ain't even properly Muslim anymore, but were from a Muslim background, are Muslim with a regular M. That simply means that you are Muslim from a cultural, identitarian, ethnicity perspective. If Islam is a kind of ethnicity, if I can extend it to include that, to mean that, that sense, the 1.8 billion Muslims with a regular M are Muslim like that in the world, meaning that they identify kind of like ethnically as a Muslim. So meaning they see diet, food, maybe some kind of cultural clothing, things like that, and they may be concerned. Now, from this category of people, you may get people who are concerned about Islam, but really Islam for them is nothing more than an ethnicity. So they may fight for the rights of Islam, but to them, fighting for the rights of Muslims is akin to fighting for racial rights. And I'm not dissing this. I think that's good, fine. People should do that. But that's all it really is for them. So, for example, they could be fighting for racial rights, but they happen to be fighting for rights that help you identify as a Muslim. Now, then there's Muslims with a capital M who actually are interested, whatever that may mean, but are interested in the message of Islam. That what was Islam about? To them, this is a deeper message. It's not just an ethnicity. It's not just a tribalism, a sense of belonging, but it's a journey to the unknown, maybe. It's a discovery. It's a reconnecting with God. To these people, they are on a path of inquiry, that they will be seeking things, they will be trying to learn things, they will be asking questions about their lives, sometimes from other people, sometimes as a soliloquy. Okay, they will be asking themselves, asking these questions out aloud. That what is this? Why am I here? Why does God want this? So these people, to them, Islam is it's a much deeper connection. Even though ironically, to some of them, the apparent connection may not, like the ethnic connection may be important or it may not be important. So if it's not that important, then it may seem quite weird to some people because they think, well, how come this person doesn't dress like that, or this woman doesn't dress in this particular way, or she doesn't wear a head covering, or she doesn't do this, or... But yet their inner connection is so much more profound. Okay. And they are the Muslims who I would refer to as Muslims with a capital M, because they are truly interested in a kind of message, which is what Islam actually was about. But by extension, Islam was about the other thing as well. I mean, it was about a sense of belonging. I'm not to deny that. But I think that's a secondary purpose. And hence it caught everyone. But the primary purpose is a difficult one. So, somebody said, in his opinion, it was a dream. Now I've got to guess the question. Chalo, that's the answer. In his opinion, it was a dream, Your Honor. Now I've got to guess the charges. So what could the potential questions or the charges be for that answer, for that response? Well, if I'll have you know that there was actually a case in Canada where a person drove almost 20 miles and stabbed his mother-in-law to death whilst sleepwalking, all under the influence, all done whilst asleep. And with that, the defense rests its case on it. So, well, I hope that... Mufti, could you please talk about collective consciousness or the concept of collective psyche? You did it briefly in December, and you said you'd come back to it. Does the Quran speak about it from your perspective? Oof, collective consciousness. Yeah. Yeah, I'm so intrigued by these things, honestly. I'm so intrigued by them. What are your opinions on Dan Brubaker? Dan Brubaker. Who's Dan Brubaker? And his recent book, Correction in Early Quran. I haven't come across that book. Abdurrahman Warsameh says, Mufti, translate into English the Urdu poems and proverbs. There's so many poems, so many. I have to say, I love Urdu poetry. I love poetry in general, even Arabic poetry. Yeah. Arabic poetry is awesome as well. But Urdu poetry does have a unique kind of a twang to it. It has a certain taste. I'll tell you why. Allow me to elucidate. I hope it doesn't play up today. The connection is kind of going back and forth. But classical concepts don't resonate so much with us. So they're all about, for example, traveling, which is fine, but it doesn't, not everybody finds that so exciting today. Wars, which are fine, but they don't, just classical Arabic poetry speaking about camels, which we totally don't get today. And whereas, let's say the Urdu poetry is more the concept of love. I mean, the classical Arabs did speak of love as well, but I'm just saying that it's, as the day and age changes, the themes change. So that's why. And then you could get very recent poets, like I often quote John Elia Sahib, Hazrat John Elia, a legend, people, a Gothic poet. Oof. He pours his heart out and he says things which other poets wouldn't dare to say. Ya salam, ya salam. A poem of his, let me give you an example. He says in one poem, Kya takalluf karein ye kehne mein? That why should we be awkward in saying this. That why should I be awkward? That let me just say it. Confidence. क्या तकल्लुफ करें ये कहने में, जो भी खुश है हम उससे जलते हैं. He says, why should we be awkward in expressing this? Whosoever is happy out there, I am envious of him. John Ilya. That is, it's such brutal kind of raw transparency that it's overwhelming, yet human, so human that you have to love it. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's pure genius, people. He has one line where he says, "Pehlu mein take ki hasina hai." That means on my side, like he's speaking about a woman, a girl that he's got, and he says, and he's saying this to his love, that's lost love. He says, "Pehlu mein take ki hasina hai," that I've got a cheap a cheap beauty, like a beautiful girl, but she's cheap. Like I've got a cheap beauty at my side. Teri furkat guzari ja rahi hai. Allah, Allah, Allah. He says that pehlu mein take ki hasina hai, teri furkat guzari ja rahi. He says that your separation, that's what I'm enduring. That's what I'm getting through. That these are the things I have to do to get over your separation. That's so raw, people. So transparent, so not trying to aspire to some kind of perfection. So in some of these poets, if it was a dream, why is it clearly written that he denied it was a dream? When questioned by Aisha, he went to Jerusalem. Oh, are we talking about the Isra wal Miraj? The number of prayers were dreamt up. Ya salam. Ya salam. It was a vision. It was a vision. Whether the vision was during a dream or not is irrelevant. Whether the vision was in a wakeful state, but it was a vision. There is a difference between a vision and a dream. So the Prophet saw a vision, and in that vision he was traveling. And it doesn't, by the way, it doesn't say anywhere that Masjid al-Aqsa was Jerusalem. So I've said that in my last week's show, that it's nowhere does it mention that Masjid al-Aqsa is Jerusalem. Hence the early Shia split with the Sunnis on this matter. That where does it say? They said, and some early people from the Salaf said that the Masjid al-Aqsa was a place outside of Mecca. That's where they said it was. Others said it was in the heavens. That's what's being meant by Masjid al-Aqsa. And then some people claimed, or maybe Jerusalem, because it was the Jewish place. But why? Because it doesn't make much sense. Why is that the most farthest point? Why? Why is the holy site of the Jewish people the farthest point of Islam? Makes no sense. But I mean, people can, obviously, Muslims accepted it. Later on, it became Muslim culture. Not everything that becomes accepted by the Muslim, when I say accepted, I don't mean everybody accepted, but it became the norm to just kind of like, it's there. Doesn't mean it's actually accurate. Okay, so for example, there being domes on masjids is a common accepted practice. It was never an accurate thing. It was never something authentic in Islam. In fact, if anything, one may argue against it from an authentic Islamic perspective. I mean, I've got no problem with domes on masjids, but I'm just saying that they're not from the sunnah of the Prophet to have a dome on a mosque. These things were never there in the time of the Prophet. So And these were influenced by other cultures. Yet today it's the norm. You identify a masjid by its dome today. So not everything that you see ubiquitous, that you see widespread, must be authentic. Okay, so just have. Replying to Robin, something about a bikini girl. I've got no idea what that. God needs nothing. Are shrines permissible? What do you want to do to the shrines? At least let the dead rest peacefully. They must be thinking, look, we're dead now, and these people still are bothering us. Are shrines permissible? What does shrines mean? Shrines as in visiting shrines, making shrines, creating shrines, decorating shrines, worshipping at shrines, asking help, seeking help from the shrines. I mean, there's hundreds of questions I could make up here. I don't know. Sitting in the shades of shrines. Using the Wi-Fi at some of these shrines. What is the question? So, right, so what evidence do Shia use to prove imama from the Quran? Aiden Hash. Elizabeth is asking, we are talking about my question, if I can pray in shorts and t-shirt so long as home alone. Is it hypothetically, Abdullah asks, hypothetically possible to make polygamy haram through trajectory hermeneutics? Make polygamy haram? Traitor! We have a kafir in our midst. Some people can never see the happiness of others, can they? You just can't bear to see other people happy in this life, huh? Some people are just full of venom. I asked Allah, don't let me see the face of a kafir today. And I log on to Facebook and look at these questions. I'm joking. Right, so let's take some of those questions. Right, so let's take some of those questions. First one, praying in praying in shorts and t-shirts. All right, it's a party. Right, so can one pray in casual or non-covered clothing with an exposure of the aura? Can one pray like that? So right, okay, now there is a difference of opinion with the majority of the people. Most people, okay, will feel that that is impossible. The Maliki madhab, the school of Madinah, the Don madhab people, the Don madhab, right, that has some, it's the Maliki madhab says, so when you're looking at them, it'll say like Hanafi, no, Shafi'i, no, Hanbali, no. The Maliki will say, allow me to expand. So you'd like to respond expansively on that. And there's a difference between the Baghdadi, the Iraqi Malikis, and some of the others. The Iraqi Maliki self, covering yourself, is an entirely separate obligation in Islam. It has nothing to do with the prayer. So he argues that the covering is simply a recommendation within Salah. It is not a condition of prayer. So technically, he argues this point that if a person prayed naked, would the Salah still be valid? and he states that the salah would be valid, although that's a separate question of whether just being naked or not, and where you are at that time. So I have said in the past as well that I do follow that ruling of the Iraqi Malikiya, that covering yourself in salah is a recommendation, and it is an issue of propriety, people. Proprietorial. It is to do with the kind of suitability of where you are. Okay, so for example, you're not going to just turn up to a masjid, just in your boxer shorts. I hope not. Otherwise, you can't trust the Qari Sahib, there might be a problem, Otherwise, the Qari Sahib might say, Acha, bete zara, can you help me with this thing in the storeroom? So I wouldn't advise, under any circumstances, turning up to a masjid in just your kind of So there's propriety issues, like how do you behave in certain places? What are the etiquettes of certain circumstances and situations? So we call that propriety. So there is, yes, there is that. So, but if a person, as far as just the salah is concerned, then I do follow that understanding that there's nothing in Islam to mandate the covering. I accept that some people have argued to the contrary, that Ya Bani Adam khudu zinatakum inda kulli masjid, as the verse of the Quran says, that take your adornment, O children of Adam, take your adornment at every point of prostration or at every masjid, meaning at every prayer. That's how many people have understood this. So I'm not saying do that. I'm not saying to people that start praying in your underwear or things like this, but I'm tackling the question that if somebody prayed like that, is the prayer valid? And yes, I would argue, in line with the Iraqi school of Madinah, the Malikiya, that yes, the prayer is valid. I hope that helps. Okay. Elizabeth saying, well, that's absolutely fine. Why did Umar prohibit mut'ah? Yes, so I have answered the other questions in this question as well in much more detail. If you check my clip on the girl in her bikini praying salah that went viral, those kind of clips are definitely going to go viral. One, it's a controversy. Two, it's a girl in a bikini. Now, those are reasons why clips go viral. You're not going to get a normal clip where a guy says, hey, people, I'm going to share some wisdom with you, going viral. Who needs wisdom in life? Who needs wisdom? That's like, who the hell needs that? But clips about girls in bikinis, now that everybody's going to pay attention to. So that clip had gone viral. And so people had really kind of was slut shaming this girl and think, I don't know who she was, but she's praying at the poolside. And so I responded, and my clip is on YouTube, and it's in much more detail, so you can watch it there. What does trajectory hermeneutics mean in an ijtihadi sense? That's a good question. Would you do a talk with Viduvids? Of course, with Viduvids. Viduvids is a great guy, man, inshallah. I am looking to, inshallah, if all goes well this week, do a talk with Haris Sultan. Now, so that'll most likely be on Thursday night, if it's going ahead, that is. Right, so that's the that's that. What other question was there? I said that there were a few questions. I said I'll tackle them. Right, YouTube people, I've any questions, post them on Facebook. It's just so much more easier for me to tackle. Have you ever been Gamkol Sharif? Of course I've been to Gamkol Sharif. Gamkol Sharif is one of the major masjids. In fact, perhaps arguably the largest masjid in Birmingham. So, and that's where I live, in the city of Birmingham. So definitely I've been on so many occasions. It's also known as Pir Abdullah Sahab's Masjid, but it's named Gamkol Sharif or Gamkol Via, but it's a great masjid. Please do more refutations. Don't know about refutations, but I will be giving my analysis on Muhammad Hijab's lecture. I watched his lecture on I forgot what it's liberalism. I almost forgot what his lecture was about there, and on liberalism, and I'll be sharing my thoughts on that in just a moment. In a moment to come, people. And I'll also be discussing, there'll be a little Mufti Masala segment. We'll discuss that. What's going on with Abdullah case has had some new developments and hasanat. And there's a clip going that's also I've seen of a preacher by the name of Abu Taymiyyah, and I've been asked to comment on the ruling that he's discussed. I'll discuss that as well. So, what else is going on? When is someone considered majnoon? Lucy is asking a question. Right, majnoon. Majnoon means mental in Arabic, so, or clinically insane, I guess. Well, that's a mental health issue, and you can refer to the professionals. Somebody said there's a controversy with Sheikh Atabek. Are you aware of this? I'm not aware of any controversy with Sheikh Atabek. Sheikh Atabek, a good guy. You know, he's a good guy. He's a great Sheikh. His heart's in the absolute right place, and his mind as well, and his efforts. Great person. I mean, I may be doing an event with him next month. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see, inshallah, how that kind of unfolds. Cool. Abdul Majid is in the house, people. Our IT technician is in the house. Does a Mutawatir Hadith overrule the practice of the people of Madinah? Anthony, question, Mutawatir Hadith. Is there such thing as a Mutawatir Hadith? That is the question. That is the question. You've got the question wrong. You've got the answer right, but the question wrong. So, what's that? There was a friend of mine, his neighbor used to say, when people would knock on his door and it would be wrong, like a wrong number, he'd say, right number, wrong door, number next door. Right number, wrong door, number next door. So like that, there was this. Is there such thing as a Mutawatir Hadith, or is this from the balaghat of certain people to legitimize certain things? Because I would say that by the definition of the Muhaddithin, it's impossible to bring a Mutawatir Hadith. By their definition of something being truly mass transmitted. So the definition they give is, let's say the Prophet said something, at least 5, some people say 10, 12, 40 people heard from him, and from each one, a similar number heard. So there's exponential growth by that route. So if you take 5, let's say the first chain, the Prophet, you have 5 people, then the next layer has 25, and then each one of those has 5. There's no such thing. They couldn't. There's no such hadith ever like that. If you could meet one scholar, who would it be and why? Yeah, there's so many scholars I'd love to meet. There's so many I'd love to meet. It's not just meet. There's people I'd love to get to know. There's a difference. It's a difference as in becoming acquainted with and just meeting. I'd love to be acquainted with scholars like Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, to get to know him. Allama Javed Ghamidi Sa, I'd love to get to know him. All these kind of Adnan Ibrahim, Sheikh Adnan Ibrahim. There are a lot of scholars that I would love to get to know. There's a difference between getting to know someone and just meeting someone. Meeting, you shake hands, you say, MashaAllah, it's a pleasure to meet you. And then you're on your merry way. Chal diye. I see very little to gain from, don't get me wrong, I'd still love to meet. I have met Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, but I'd love to meet these people, but just meet and greet, it has very little to offer. So that's, how about Yusuf Estes? I have met Yusuf Estes. I have met him. Bilal Phillips. I met Bilal Phillips. I haven't met Bilal. But of course, I'd like to. I'm a social person. I'm a social, outgoing person. I'd love to meet anyone, everyone, of course, and ulama especially. I have met Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. Somebody said, I'm surprised you haven't met him. I have met him. But apart from exchanging a few words, as in, how are you doing, Sheikh? It's a pleasure to meet. I don't know him. I haven't become acquainted with him, as in, I haven't got to, actually have deep discussions and get to know him. I would love to, but, is blowing, Fady or Shady is blowing on the nuts in like putting a curse on someone. Yes, it is. This one almost naughty, but yes, it is. Yes. Opinions on Imran Khan in America. Imran Khan in America. Who's Imran Khan? Are we talking about the Prime Minister of Pakistan, or Swami Raza? If God is merciful, then why does he allow animals to brutally tear apart other animals? The tragedy, the brutality of nature. It has a brutal realism to it that is all part and parcel of growth and life. It is intricately bound with life. That, in the words of Ghalib, Kede hayat o band gham asal mein dono ek hain. Maut se pehle aadmi gham se najat paaye kyun. That being trapped within problems, within gham. Gham is an amazing word in Urdu. Gham can mean like sorrows. It can mean, I suppose, but in Urdu it's been kind of owned and glamorized, which is interesting because it makes it then difficult to translate. Because sorrows in English are only negative. Nobody wants to own sorrows. Nobody wants to own that dark side of life. But in Urdu poetry, the poets kind of want, like they embrace gham. So it's difficult sometimes translating that. I struggle to translate into, I don't know if there's, but Ghalib says that being trapped with problems and being bound by life are in essence one. Dono asal mein ek hai, that they are just one. That why should it be that before death, man is emancipated or freed from sorrows? How could it be when they both one? That to become free from one, you must become free from life. It's a deep concept in that. But it is these things are, they are part and parcel of nature for growth, for survival of the fittest, for life to evolve. There must be struggle. It's a brutal realism, but one that is necessary for the arrival of humans. You know, for us to arrive at the cognitive revolution, there must have been this struggle in nature. I suppose one could argue that, you know, God could have just done everything. He could have just put us in. But then would we really have that free will? That's the question. Melancholy is embraced in English. Yeah, Rash, ahlan wa sahlan. You're right, actually, you're right. Melancholy, yeah. So I suppose that kind of, yeah, that's right. But I suppose melancholy isn't so used by people today. I mean, it is used, but I'm just saying it's not a common kind of term. But I agree with you. It's like in the poem of Faiz, Ahmed Faiz, where he says, Tera gham mil jaye, to gham-e dahr ka jhagda kya hai? That all I want is your melancholy or your gham, your kind of sorrow. That's all I want to be. I want to embrace it. And if I get that, then who cares about the sorrows of the... But he doesn't mean it here as in who cares about the sorrows of the world. He means that who cares in chasing the sorrows of the world, which is strange in English. Tera gham mil jaye to gham-e dahr ka jhagda kya hai? Now, what is the point of you know, of all of this? That teri surat se hai alam mein baharon ko sabat, teri aankhon ke siwa duniya mein rakha kya hai? Allah, Allah, Allah. That what is there in this world besides those beautiful eyes? That what is there really that counts? That's what he says. People, you need to learn poetry. You need to learn poetry. That when something is transmitted massively from so many people, it becomes impossible that all the narrators have met to invent a lie. That is true. That is the understanding of mass transmission. You see, this, people, is a, you know, when people speak about mutawatir, something is mutawatir, what they are, this topic, this discussion is a discussion of epistemology. Okay. Epistemology, people. Epistemological issues. You thought Mufti doesn't know these things. I'm just kidding. Right, so epistemology, you might ask, what is epistemology? Some of you might think, does Mufti just say these things to try and look intelligent? Karna padta hai, boss, karna padta hai. We've got to do these things. Otherwise, people don't believe that I actually read. If I don't force feed you these words, I don't have no value. I'm messing. Epistemology basically is the study of how we know things. So how do I know this glass right here, this pint glass, with my special cocktail in there? Allah, Allah. I could tell you what it is, but nah, nate. Allah. So this, how do I know this is there? Because I see it, because of sensation, because of perception, because of intuition, because of learning things. All the ways, all the possible methods by which one can know something, the study of that is called epistemology. Okay. Now, when we are discussing tawatur, the point is, it is really an issue of epistemology. That somebody is saying that, look, the Prophet said this, and the other person is asking, but how do you truly know 100% that he said it? So people have come up with a concept of this is the issue. But when you're discussing hadith, is there such thing as mutawatir? Now you tell me, just be honest, how many people must it take for something for you to not even entertain 1% doubt? That's a personal question, but it's a very relevant and real question. That if I said to you that, oh, I heard some news, I heard something has happened, how many people must tell you that? What must the avenues be? Even you can't verify it. You can't actually, like, imagine somebody said, oh, Donald Trump had an accident. Donald Trump's had a severe accident, let's say. And, you know, he's in critical. How many people must tell you that for that, or must be talking about that for it, without it be enough? Worldwide, 3 people. You're having a laugh, mate. 3 people. So would 5 people even be enough? So exactly, so you tell me this issue of epistemology, for us to believe with certainty that there isn't even a 1% doubt that the Prophet said this. Is there ever such a hadith? Is there ever? And the answer is no, there isn't. And this isn't something I'm saying. Many scholars before me, great scholars of hadith, Ibn Hibban denied this, Al-Hazmi denied this. They said, look, they said it as it was. But later on, you've got to understand the enterprise of the scholars involved. This is why people, I always advise you that when you're studying, you know, if you're serious about religion and things like this, it's always good to, and you can use this in any aspect of life. You don't have to reserve this for religion, but always assess the power at play, the power dynamics. You see, human beings are complex creatures. We're not just, when people say things, they don't just say things. There's huge power issues, power dynamics at play. There's things like status, positions of power, there's subconscious things taking place. There's so much. I mean, I don't know, those of you that have ever looked into, and I'm not saying this has to be 100% accurate, but there's something there. There's a sub-science within psychology, sometimes referred to as Gameology. Okay, and this is the study of games, but not like video games and things like that. But it's the study of kind of mental games that people play. And you'll see things like, and it's at the forefront, people like Rick Byrne, who's got a book called Games That People Play. And you can buy the book, and it may be, some of it may be slightly outdated now because it was written decades ago. And maybe people don't behave in those exact same ways today, but still, it's interesting. And let me give you an example. What he's talking about is subconsciously the kind of, and sometimes consciously and subconsciously, the games of interaction that people are playing. So, as an example, back then, a few decades ago, when women weren't as thriving in in the workplace as they are today, let's say. So they didn't have maybe as many. They did have opportunities a few decades ago as well, but I'm just saying today it's probably there's it's a lot. I would say reasonably equal, but people may challenge that. But my point is, he gives the scenario of this is one game of a woman who is too daunted, too intimidated to pursue her ambitions. She's too daunted. That thought scares her. The thought of failure, like of going out there, and let's say she wants to become a writer, or she wants to become something, but she's too frightened of failing. So what she does is she marries a husband, a guy that is very controlling. This husband doesn't allow her to pursue an academic pursuit, like doesn't allow her to go to university. He's very controlling. Now she then justifies her inability to become a, let's say, a writer or a nurse or whatever it is on her husband. Says, well, I'd love to have been this, but my husband, he's too controlling and too possessive and doesn't let me. And this is why you can understand why I said the book may be slightly outdated, but the games are still real. Now, she may blame him for withholding her ambition, but really she chose a person like that was very controlling on purpose to kind of fulfill that game. And what I'm trying to, what Eric Berne and other psychologists are trying to show here is that human beings are very complex. And there's a lot of games that go on between people. And I know the term games makes it sound jovial, but they're not actually always jovial or necessarily fun. They're just the kind of interactions that are taking place. KM said most Muslim men are controlling. Right. So they may be. Unfortunately, I actually may agree with you. I think that unfortunately many Muslim men are still very insecure, and that's a shame. Actually, it's a tragedy. But getting back to this point, you see, when you're studying a discussion within Islam, and you're looking at a hadith, mutawatir, being mutawatir, this concept is posited by who? The muhaddithin, who are invested in this enterprise. They have a stake in this enterprise. Without hadith, there is no them. They derive power from this enterprise. I'm not, obviously, I agree with hadith. I'm not somebody that derides hadith or is against hadith. These books behind me that you can see are mainly, especially this whole section, is all hadith. And I've studied hadith, but I'm trying to say, let's also be real when we're analyzing these things, that there is a huge element of power at stake. And people don't like it when they're being questioned, like scholars, when they have rulings. They don't like being theologians. They don't like being questioned, their power. So they come up with these theories that, oh, this is mutawatir. And you think, well, is it? And they think, well, now that I've said it's mutawatir, you can't even question it. And you think, well, why can't I question it? No, you can't question it. It's mutawatir. It's mass transmitted. And you're like, well, but it isn't. And you're like, no, it is. To deny mutawatir is to deny that which is known by necessity. And to deny that which is known by necessity makes you a kafir. So you think, well, slightly more than I bargained for. I just had a question on hadith, but I've I set off with a question of hadith and it looks like I've walked off Islam. Right? So I think I'll just kind of hold my horses and just let this be. But these tools, and you'll see the scholars do the same thing with the concept of Ijjma, consensus, a very kind of bogeyman concept that they've come up with. They yield, around everywhere to just hurl, a kind of, it's an intimidation tactic, that's all. But yeah, do you have a problem with me having a conversation with someone? Can you not have your private conversations on my live, please? This is about me. You're impacting my nafs. Right. Is istighatha upon the Prophet shirk? Right, look, there's two things here that need to be separated. One is, what do we mean by shirk? Are we trying to chuck somebody out of Islam? I'm not in that game of trying to chuck people out of Islam. And I don't believe Islam is in that game of trying to chuck people out. So people doing whatever they're doing, I don't believe in trying to scare people away from Islam. I don't believe in trying to tell people you're no longer Muslim and things like this. Okay, so that doesn't interest me. Okay, no me importa. Okay, it does not bother me or concern me. Okay, however, if we're going to be analytical and just look at this concept of praying to the Prophet, then in all honesty, is this not just a return to the gods of old? And by gods, I mean with a small g, not a capital G. Right? So human beings have long struggled with the concept of one supreme, transcendent deity, as did the Arabs of Hijabs. They struggled with that because that transcendent God is too distant. He's not interested in us. Why should I, what does that God want with us? You understand? Just like as I gave the example as in Hinduism, Brahman is the almighty, the great ultimate. But Brahman, also referred to as Bhagwan, but Bhagwan can also refer to other deities as well, is so transcendent that Brahman doesn't care. You can't connect with Brahman. So you connect with lesser deities who can connect you with the ultimate deity. Now, this was the problem that the Arabs of Hijaz had. And the Prophet's journey of prophethood with them was trying to bridge the gap between the impersonal and the personal God. And he did. And people did embrace the message of Islam. And I feel that's such a difficult mission for all humans to just bridge that gap. It'll take a lifetime and we will still struggle. So, and this is just a fine example, and you'll see, well, people, if they won't resort to gods and deities and demigods and statues, then they'll just resort to saints. It's the same. You can call it whatever you like. Heal Jizya Sammuha ma shi'tum. There's a saying of Sayyidina Omar radiallahu an, where he had a treaty with some of the Byzantines, and what had happened was they used to give a certain amount of tax, and it was part of the peace treaty. And kingdoms have always done that. There's nothing new about that. Just as today, people pay. They pay for certain things. They pay to be part of certain, to be part of the EU, for example. We have to contribute. There's things like this, or to pay certain kinds of things, especially in previous times, was very common. So they the Byzantines, they were paying jizya to Umar. Now, some of the, I don't mean the great, but a particular kind of kingdom, because you've got to remember there was the Ghassanid kingdoms and part of, and this term jizya was a term used by many people before Islam. This is not an Islamic term. Jizya was something that was used by people like the Nabateans. It was used by people like the Ghassanids, by the Lakhmids, by people, kingdoms prior to Islam used this term of jizya. Okay, and it's actually in their texts, and some have argued it goes right back to the Hebrew with the term gazit is jizya. Nevertheless, anyway, so one of these kings, he said that, look, jizya is an embarrassing term, so he stopped paying the jizya, and Umar radiallahu an wrote to him that, look, you know, to do that is to break the treaty, and it's a declaration of war. So he said, no, you misunderstanding me. This one misunderstanding. He said, look, this is an embarrassment for me to pay the jizya. I'm happy to pay you, but I just won't pay you the jizya. What I will pay you is called a hadiyah. It's a gift. So every year, I will pay you the sum, but this will come as a hadiyah, not as a jizya. So, so he wrote back saying, "I've got no problem in fulfilling the treaty. We'll pay, but we're not going to call it jizya. We're going to call it hadiyah." So Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anh, when he received the letter, his reply was, "Hiya al-jizya sammuha ma shi'tum." You know, it is what it is. Call it whatever you want. So like, no me importa, people. It does not bother me. It does not bother me. So, what is going on? From what I have learned, it is indeed in the Quran. No idea what you're talking about. No idea what you're talking about. Right, so... what do you think about doing acting as a career? As in me doing acting as a career. No. Too much flattery, you know. I know. You're not asking about me. Right, what do I think about... Yep, it's permissible. You can do acting. It's fine. And I don't believe, you know, this, by the way, there's this question. There was this question about if you're getting married on set, like let's say in a scene, in a movie, does that, and you say, you know, have you accepted? I do, like qabiltu. Now, some of the fuqaha said, you know, the scholars as well, it's like they've got nothing better to do sometimes. They said, astaghfirullah, that the nikah has happened. You are now actually his wife, because the ijab, the qabul took place and there were witnesses. So it's too late. So no, I don't believe these kind of things to be literal. Salman Shah says, are kissing scenes permissible? Nutties. Salman Shah, you're watching the kissing scenes? Toba. The haram scenes. Astaghfirullah. Toba. You know, it's like as a kid when something's on the TV and it'll turn to a kissing scene, and you're like, where's the remote? Where's the remote? And your dad will give you a slap, like it's my fault that they're kissing. And we're like, why is this my fault? mean, I'm not the director of the damn movie. It's like, God, huh? Yes, salam. The wonders of this world. That's what it's like growing up in a typical kind of Muslim, especially a Desi kind of household. And usually what happens, you know, from the nature, the way it works is at that moment, for some reason, the remote control will just stall and it'll just get stuck on that scene, and you'll be like, and that'll be like the only scene in the entire movie. And that's the scene that your parents are going to walk in on. Like, what were the odds of that? Like, if you were to place a bet, that what are the odds that here's a movie for just under 2 hours and there's only one scene in there for a few seconds, and your parents are going to walk in any time during, what are the chances that they will walk in on that precise moment? Lo and behold, it'll defy the odds, I'm telling you. So you'll just hear, huh? Ramya? Anyway, let's focus. Let's come back. For that, I need therapy. I need counseling. But let's come back to zone back into where we're meant to be. Right. So what are some of the questions, people? What are some of the questions? What's going on? Shall I take some of the questions from here? Is Mawlid permissible? Yeah. Mawlid, is Mawlid permissible? If you want to do it, do it. Who cares? Why is this even a big deal? Why is this a big deal? You know, we're still stuck on, is Mawlid permissible? I mean, for God's sake, Money Heist season 3 is out and we're still stuck on, is Mawlid permissible? Is this... You need to move with the day and age, people. Move on. So what else is going on? Is Mawlid permissible? Do you do it? I don't celebrate a celebration per se or do anything like that. I don't have any objection to people doing it. I've, attended Mawlids in the past when I've been invited, but I don't kind of go out of my way to do anything. Somebody's trying to ruin a TV series for me. Astaghfirullah. Spoiler alert. Toba. There's a special pit reserved in the pits of hell for such people. Balagani, it's reached me that there's a special pit for those people who do spoiler alerts. That's Toba. Right, so, all right, what else is going on, people? What else? Let's take a look at some of these questions. Well, I'm trying to... Lahda. Whoa. Right. These are the same questions I'm getting every single week. Or is this last week's? No. Right. I should have like see, this is the heat. I should have like a wardrobe crew. Just come in and they kind of like brush up. Everything's ready. All right, go, take. Soon, inshallah. Almost there. Right, so what are my... KM is asking, do we literally sit up in our graves? No. I don't think you literally do these kind. I think this kind of language is simply the religious rubric that is used to kind of bring people's attention to doing certain things. Sorry, I'm just trying to just realize the non-Euclidean geometry going on. Is Mexican music permissible? Mexicano, of course, of course, of course. Vive el Mexico. That's the, why not, people? Why not? Music is not haram. Music is arguably, it is the nourishment of the soul. Okay. And you can see the reality to that. It's amazing what certain sound waves can do. And I feel in some ways that it's amazing that if things like string theory be true, if it hasn't been, it can't be tested yet, but if string theory be true, then the essence of everything is simply vibrations. It's amazing that these vibrations, you see, because sound doesn't actually exist, people. Sound is an interaction. There's no such thing as sound. It doesn't have a physical kind of reality to it. Sound is the interaction between waves, airwaves, sound waves, which are simply just waves in the air, and an organism that interprets those waves. So that kind of also solves the age-old question that if a tree falls in the forest and nobody's there to observe it, does it make a sound? No, it doesn't make a sound, because a sound doesn't actually have a reality to it. There is no actual thing as sound in that sense. It's airwaves being measured by an organism, being not just measured, interpreted and received by an organism. So, and the fact that music can actually heal people, and many Muslims during the medieval times, they had in the hospitals, maristans they used to call them, they had music therapy as a healing kind of mechanism. And people that are sometimes suffering from certain neuronal degenerative illnesses, you can find that music helps them. It actually helps the brain. How could this be haram? How could that be haram? It makes no sense whatsoever. Right, so I think that's an important. Pulwa Tuma says, I thought you were Dominican. Que lo que, right, when I first saw you. Right, okay. Well, I do want to visit that part of that whole continent, inshallah, some point in the future. I need to improve and then go on an exploration. Become my own kind of what's the look at these, some comments coming up, right? People, let's we get distracted. Let's focus. Let's cover Muhammad Hijab's talk on liberalism, because I think this is quite important. A few people did send it to me. It's a recent talk done by Muhammad Hijab in, I'm not exactly sure where it is. I think it's the Netherlands. And so it's on YouTube. And Muhammad Hijab, it's at a university. He's giving a thorough discussion, it's not a dialogue really, but a thorough kind of lecture, if you like, a detailed, or apparently or allegedly detailed lecture on liberalism, what it means, an Islamic viewpoint, how it's wrong, how it's baseless, how they don't have any valid arguments to argue from, that they don't have a valid standpoint. This is the kind of claim being made by Muhammad Hijab. So I watched the lecture just to see, well, what is this about? Now I'd like to clarify a few things, like what I thought about this lecture. I think that I did read, especially in the comments, that it seemed to be very well received. It was in a university setting, but the impression I got is that it was to a Muslim audience, okay, because it seems to be very kind of playing to that Muslim kind of sentiment. So I'm not sure if it was a heavily mixed crowd or not, but it doesn't seem like that by the way the talk is delivered. Okay, so Muhammad Hijab begins by defining liberalism. What is liberalism? Now, I want to make a few pointers and then go into some of the discussions that he had, just to kind of give an overview. First of all, I feel that either Muhammad Hijab he hasn't understood he hasn't fully, holistically grasped the concept, which I'm not so sure, because he is an intelligent person. Muhammad Hijab is very intelligent. He's not somebody stupid or somebody naive. So I'm not sure if that stands true, or is he deliberately kind of going down a particular route of argument just to kind of win his case and get points. I don't know. Or is it that he's being told to say things in a particular way? I don't know what the reasoning is. I mean, he knows, Allahu A'lam. But I think it was a very poor job. It was done very poorly in my perspective. His kind of breakdown of liberalism, because what he was doing is he was arguing against liberalism the way Muslims have sectarian debates. So this was his point. Like let's say you are about to argue with the Shia, for example. Argue is the wrong word. Let's say you're about to have a debate with the Shia, or with the Sufi, or with the Hanafi, or with the Maliki, or with the Wahhabi, or with a religious. This is how Muslims within religion debate. What they do is they find out what that person adheres to. Then they will use the figures. So let's say now I'm going to debate against a Hanafi. So what I'll do is I'll find out, okay, what do the great Hanafi scholars have to say about a particular, whatever the issue is. And then I'm going to say to them, but look, you're saying this, but Imam Abu Hanifa himself used to do Raf'ul Yadayn, for example. Or I'm going to say, you're saying this, but Ibn Taymiyyah, he used to go and visit Sufi graves. So how can you be against Sufi? So what we do is we argue from a point of compelling leadership, compelling authority. So we assume that figurehead is an absolute authority for this person. So we're going to say, well, you claim to be Maliki. So, so Imam Malik said this. Now you're stuck. You're stuck now, because I've quoted your Imam. This is the kind of polemics that happen within, unfortunately, but within religion, within Islam especially. That is how all of these Islamic debates take place. So if you're going to argue with the Shia, here is a Shia book. Your Imam said this particular Imam, Ayatollah said this, now you're stuck. I've got you. So even if that person says, yeah, but I don't really follow. No. What do you mean you don't follow? The Imam has said it. It's in the Kafi, if it's against the Shia. Or it's, it's in the Mudawwana by Imam Malik. Or it's in Raddul Muhtar by the Hanafi. So what we do is we argue from an angle of compelling authority, compelling leadership. So Muhammad Hijab was using this tactic, okay, against liberalism. Right now, that doesn't make any sense, because outside of religion, people don't see the world like that. Okay, so you have to understand that people don't feel that they're compelled to some kind of allegiance. This is to begin with. So what Muhammad Hijab did in this lecture is he began, and a thorough part of this lecture, a huge part of this, was dedicated to the figureheads of historical liberalism. So what does liberalism mean? Although Muhammad Hijab didn't really, he does touch upon it, to be fair, but just to explain, liberalism is simply a stance against authoritarianism. That's all it is, in essence. So it is a trend, if you want to say trend. It is a feeling, a sentiment that you do not like others being authoritarian. It is the resistance. Okay, that is what liberalism in essence is. In essence. Now, what Muhammad Hijab did is he focused on people like John Locke, who's had a historical figure, who's had a huge hundreds of from the into the 18th century, where he's argued about liberalism in his day and age, that why you should have, what does it mean to have rights, the rights of property is a fundamental intrinsic human right that we have. This should be preserved. And so John Locke has obviously made invaluable contributions. Not saying he hasn't, but yeah. So Muhammad Hijab spent a considerable amount of time explaining this. That look, John Locke. But what did John Locke base this upon? John Locke himself was a Christian. So he based it upon what he believed was God empowered these rights. What did Thomas Hobbes base his theories on? That he was a Christian. So he spends a considerable amount of time speaking about philosophers from a few hundred years ago, who in essence were Christian, most of them. Some weren't, but most were. And then he argues that they enshrined this ability to have rights in religion, which they may have. I'm not arguing against that. I'm not saying that's not true. He then spent a considerable amount of time saying that the human rights charter that has been drawn up by the United Nations, which is called human rights, is a kind of modern term, which he says, look, if you search the internet, and he brings up some charts, it didn't exist before the 1940s. There's very little mention of human rights. People refer to these things as naturalistic rights, and human rights, it's only been since the UN. And this is fundamentally a continuation of John Locke and Hobbes and Rousseau and all these people from the 17th century and the 18th century who were Christians. So today, and this followed Locke and Rousseau and Thomas Hobbes and all these people, or you are just a hypocrite and you cannot actually claim to be a liberal. This is absurd. That is the worst kind of reasoning that I've ever seen. I've seen it being used in religion, but that is ridiculous and preposterous, and to use that kind of reasoning when debating matters of trends of politics and life and viewpoints against authority, to use these kind of things, it makes no sense that, oh, just because I believe in that there shouldn't be authoritarianism, and this view was also echoed by John Locke, I must now be a Christian because John Locke said it. Duh. I mean, but that's ridiculous. So that's one very important fallacy that needs to be highlighted. And unfortunately, you'll see these kind people like Muhammad Hijab and other people resort to this quite often when speaking about non-Muslims. They will use religious debate tactics, which the world doesn't abide by. I mean, it makes no sense in the real world. These sectarian debates, sectarian rules of polemics, sectarian rules of debate that are, but you're speaking for liberalism, John Locke spoke for liberalism, Kant spoke for liberalism, so you must by necessity either uphold all of Kantian philosophy or you have no claim to liberalism. I don't think so, mate. I claim whatever the hell I want. It doesn't make any sense. Like, why do I need to abide by whatever Kantian philosophy? I mean, I'm not saying it's so problematic, but why am I even bound by that? You see, so this is one fallacy that needed to be pointed out, right? So the other thing is that, so during the lecture, during the lecture, Muhammad Hijab makes reference to many people. They will say today things like, oh, if you claim to be a liberal, so he says that, look, many people will say today that, look, oh, okay, but I still have concerns. What's wrong with homosexuality? What's wrong with these things? You know, why don't we, people ain't causing harm. They're not doing anything. And he says, well, we say to these people, these are unnaturalistic and so on. I just want to I'd like to make a point here. You see, I don't like really making these points time and time again. Reason being, one, I've got a detailed clip explaining this, but two, I feel that it just wrongly kind of pigeonholes a person, because, but just to clarify the point, I feel that we as Muslims should really leave the LGBTQ people alone. Okay, stop making this about you. This isn't, look, let them be, right? Their sexuality, their lives, just let it be. This is not a fight that you're going to win. Okay, now I'm just being very real, and in your failure, you will drag down the religion. And that's something you have no right to do. So my point isn't your standpoint, okay? My point is that you will, in this obstinate kind of, or stubborn form of resistance, let's say, you will deface Islam. Because this is not a fight that you're going to win. Let's just be honest. The civil rights movement today, in our day, right now, is centered on the LGBTQ community. So, and they've won the cultural war. So just let people be. Look, whatever it is, it's their right, it's their people. Whoever wants to do whatever they want to do, stop forcing religion in there. Because unfortunately, it's making a fight out of something that didn't need to be like that. Okay, so that's a kind of word of advice that I would like to give people. People may not listen to me, and that's fine, but I would say, look, just let people be. So he gave this example saying, look, we explain to people that homosexuality is unnatural. Another thing we need to stop saying is that, in my understanding, that it's unnatural, because that isn't actually accurate. That is not an accurate description of homosexuality. If we want to be precise and accurate, because if you're saying it's unnatural, that means it's not found in nature. Now, the truth is, by and large, most species of creatures are bisexual. Most species. So it's actually heavily found in nature. Contrary to Muhammad Hijab's argument of incest. So if you see the studies presented that many species do like to mate with the opposite sex that is of a close genetic resemblance. So the genetic GSA, genetic sexual attraction theory, shows that, for example, mice or other things, when they found certain, let's say, mice that shared strong resemblance, a strong kind of smell and things like that to their own family, they have wanted to mate with them. So they've got loads of studies. I mean, you can Google them. And there's, in fact, Diamond Jared brings it also in his The Third Chimp. He brings a set of studies there as well in his book. It's a great book, by the way, if you haven't been through it. Now, but you will see that when the mice or these other subjects, whenever they were presented in these observations with their actual siblings, so a mouse was presented with its actual sister as opposed to somebody related to him, even when he'd never met, I'm using the term here sister in that sense, even when he'd never met that sibling before ever, he would not mate with the actual sibling, but he would choose a mate that resembles her over other mates that don't resemble her. So the genetic sexual attraction theory is there, but the Westermarck effect or the other effects that people, or not, sorry, this wasn't just people, creatures do not choose their actual siblings to mate with. So this incest rule is not found in nature. I'm not saying it's never found, and hence it's found in humans as well, but it's not generally found. So if you were to use the term it's not natural, that's fine. It's not commonly or not generally found in nature. It may be found as a kind of odd occurrence, and that's fine. So this was another point that that Muhammad Hijab had kind of made, heavily relying on this. The other thing I'd like to clarify is, you see, there is an over-reliance on removing agency from people in kind of assuming that human beings don't think of things for themselves. So Muhammad Hijab kept referring throughout this lecture to people that, look, when you say this, your rules, your laws are based in religion. Without that, you wouldn't have had a morality. And it is true that, look, most laws throughout the world are archaically or classically based on some kind of religion. That is true. Like, so, let's say within the UK, these laws, common laws, and the common laws were based on a Judeo-Christian kind of heritage, unquestionably, as it was throughout Europe and other places. But human beings do not need, let's just be honest, because he touched upon a discussion of saying that there would be no morality otherwise. If you didn't have that, you'd have nothing, because he's saying that you're basing it on these people who were anchored in religion. That's why they came up with it. But the truth is, human beings would know that to kill is wrong. They wouldn't need, in all honesty, they wouldn't need to be told that by scripture as the only method of discerning that it's wrong. How do we know that? Well, we know that through nature. Primates have a sense of morality that is a much lower sense than us, but they have a sense of justice. So chimpanzees will retaliate. They understand a sense of justice. They understand that being attacked is what is right, what is wrong. They understand these concepts at a very low level. I mean, at a primate level. They do have these, if we want to call them concepts or instincts, the morality instinct at that low level. It exists in nature. It's not something that, so for example, this gives the assumption that human beings are totally dumb. Like human beings had no idea that to kill was wrong until the commandment came that thou shalt not kill. And then human beings said, oh, we shouldn't kill. That's stupid. Of course they knew that to kill was wrong. The commandment simply came as a reinforcement. They knew that anyway. The commandments came to tell them that, to reinforce the significance and how sacred this law is. That's all. It didn't mean that if the commandment was never revealed, people had no idea. They would just go around killing each other. Like, oh, have I done something wrong? I didn't realize. That's absurd. Human beings, of course, we can decipher these things, right? So to say that, look, we have, if you were to remove scripture, human beings would not have a morality, that is a flawed argument. And if we're to be honest, if we're to just observe the world as it is today, most European societies, which are definitely secular, have arrived, I mean, I'm not saying they've arrived at a perfect ethics, but they've arrived at ethics without God, if we're to be honest. And their ethics definitely seem to be much more ethical than the Muslim world. If we're going to be honest, like, let's just be honest about that. And I gave the example to somebody the other day. I said, look, let's just be honest. Like, if I'm in the UK, if I'm going to buy a car and I have an option of buying it from an English guy, a white guy, and I have an option of buying it from a Muslim, and this is very unfortunate to say this, but I'm going to end up choosing because I'm going to think, Muslims, I know that something's going to be dodgy with that car. I mean, I'm embarrassed to say that, but that is unfortunately the reality on the ground. That we know that we are very dodgy in many things. We don't have a good sense of ethics, and that's being born and raised here. In the Muslim countries, they totally don't. We don't trust it. You don't trust things in the Muslim countries. Let's be honest. It's heavily corrupt. If you went to Pakistan, you wouldn't, trust what's going on there. So, if we just be honest, let's put our biases aside. They have kind of arrived at ethics without God. So I disagree strongly with this kind of derision of saying, oh, well, you couldn't do it without scripture. You couldn't do it without scripture. You could, because scripture was just, remember what I said, it was the Kintsugi kind of, it was just, the Kintsugi, the hypothesis that it was just what society already had anyway. So I thought that was quite important to emphasize that. The other thing was that if we were to take the example of, let's say, ethics if we were to reject that human beings continue to develop in ethics, then by that example, Muhammad Hijab would have to accept, if he denied that, he would have to accept that slavery today is fine. But there's nothing wrong with slavery, because in the 7th century, slavery existed. So when the Quran was revealed, slavery was ubiquitous. It was everywhere. And the Quran acknowledged its ubiquitous nature. It just kind of just took it as a given and just carried on. It didn't kind of really address the issue, because it knew that to address the issue right now wouldn't be the time to address it. So if you are to claim that our morality does not develop over time and ethics do not evolve, then, and we must only go by the ethics that existed in the 7th century, then today you'd have to argue that slavery is fine. You may say it's illegal, but it's fine. Like if I to enslave another human being, you'd see nothing ethically wrong with that, or morally wrong with that on a personal basis level. But you might say, well, society doesn't accept it, but I think personally it's fine. You'd have to argue that, which I think is once again ridiculous. So these things, robbing the agency from individuals don't think like that. You see, when a person has a liberal attitude today, that he doesn't like people being authoritarian, that doesn't mean you have that attitude because you read a ton of books by John Locke. And it doesn't mean that you have that attitude because you've been reading Jean-Jacques Rousseau. I mean, you may have, but most people haven't been reading Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and they haven't been reading these kind of philosophers. They just have that feeling, and they have that understanding. They're not automatons. They can't think for themselves. The other issue would be that if you took this principle, then that's to say everything in Islam that was first championed by other people must belong to them, and we must honor them. So that's like saying because Socrates spoke of God and the soul before Islam did, therefore if we speak of the soul, we have to believe in what Socrates said. Or we have to acknowledge everything goes back to Socrates and to Plato, because they spoke about it before we did. So, I mean, but this is a theory that infantilizes. It treats human beings like infants. It's not true that human beings, we are very capable agents. We are constructing our worldview as we're going along. So you can stop a person on the street and he will be against certain matters. Like I'm against capital punishment. If you stop people in England, most people, sane people, thank God, and in Europe, thank God, sane people are against capital punishment. If you stop somebody on the street and ask them, would you agree with capital punishment? They will say no. Is that because they've read Jean-Jacques Rousseau? Or is that because they agree 100% with John Locke? Or have they been, pondering over the arguments presented by Jeremy Bentham? Have they? Of course not. Most people have. Some people may know who these people are. Other people may not even know who these people are. But they, on these aspects. So for me to reject death penalty today, and if you're going to find a philosopher that rejected it, let's say Bertrand Russell, if you're going to say, well, Bertrand Russell kind of rejected that as well, I'd say, well, great, awesome, rock on. But does that mean now I have to agree with everything Bertrand Russell said, and for you to find something that Bertrand Russell had said and catch me out on it? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So this was an important factor. The other thing was that there was a huge discussion that Muhammad Hijab had about the death penalty. And he said, well, look, but America, and about apostates. And he said, well, Islam, and I feel here that Muhammad Hijab kind of, he was kind of like slightly hesitant. I think Muhammad Hijab has probably moved on from the Salafi Wahhabi understanding of saying, and some other people's understanding of saying that we should kill apostates, but he's probably too worried to say it out publicly. So he's taken the stance that apostasy is treason, which fine, I agree that I feel that many scholars did feel that apostasy was treason in later, especially in the later in centuries. But may I remind Muhammad Hijab here that most of his favorite scholars that he always would quote would disagree heavily. Ibn Taymiyyah and all these people, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, all these people will say, kill the apostate. Kill the apostate. They would have no mercy. And the overwhelming majority of ulama in the past would have said, kill the apostate. So here, I like it, but this one naughty, you know. So Muhammad Hijab, he here has kind of like abandoned the scholars in light of reason, and I like that. But he, I think he tried, he did it on the sly, like, is anybody looking? No, I'll jump ship, which is great. I love the fact that he's jumped ship on that, and he's saying that it's about treason and not about faith. Although he was a bit unclear in between. He was trying to say, well, you know, he wasn't being, and he spoke of an Islamic State and an Islamic State, and I don't know what on earth an Islamic State is. But anyway, that's a different discussion for a different day. But this thing of, and then he said, look, well, you can kill people today in the amendment and in the American whatever constitution and certain amendment and certain articles and certain states still allow capital punishment. Aha, so what are you going to say about that? And he said, well, if somebody comes to you and they argue against capital punishment, then you're going to say, well, aha, you know, John Locke and these people and these, did you know they believed in capital punishment? And he spent, aha. And do you know, in the American Constitution and in the Bill of Rights and in this amendment it said this, and in this article it said this. Aha! What would you have to say? But he completely ignored the fact that the other person will just say, well, I don't care. I condemn that too. Why would you assume that there is an allegiance? This isn't a religion. If British law had capital punishment, then I would condemn it. I don't give a damn if it's in the unwritten constitution of the UK or the written constitution of America. I wouldn't care less. I couldn't care less. If it's wrong, it is wrong. I don't have no allegiance to some Bill of Rights or some constitution if it's wrong. So I don't say, and this sentiment that I'm saying is shared by so many people, because this, what is meant by liberalism, in the sense that you are against authoritarianism, is a sentiment. That's all it is. It's just a feeling, and that feeling, people have it. Some people may have had it hundreds of years ago, and other people may have it today, and some people in the future, but it doesn't mean you have to be, it's a kind of tribe that, oh, once you have it, you're stuck with the tribe, and everything that whole tribe, you have to dress like them and walk like them and talk like them. I mean, that's ridiculous. Somebody asked, what have I got against capital punishment? I have answered that in other places, but look, check this out. The state says to kill people is wrong. It is wrong. To kill anybody is wrong. And okay, just the network slightly lingered there. I find that so ironic that to stop people from killing people, we kill people. That's like, imagine somebody around here was breaking the glass of windows. So we say, stop it, and then we smash a window to show them that stop smashing windows. Stop killing people. Otherwise, we're going to kill you. I find it absurd. I feel that human beings can rise above that. And alhamdulillah, we have that on earth. We have that in the European, especially in Europe, and in some other parts of the world. There is no death penalty. Okay, so human beings have that capacity. Don't underestimate what humans can do. See, like people will say, yeah, but if you don't kill people, then it's going to go out of control. But it doesn't. Look at Europe. I mean, it's not perfect, but it doesn't go out of control. That's all I'm saying. So, yeah. Right, so just coming back to this Muhammad hijab thing, and to wrap that up, so I feel that, look, there was a lot of talk about about the death penalty and giving traitors treason, people who have committed treason, the death penalty, as a justification that it's okay to kill people for changing their faith. I find that stupid and absurd as an argument, because look, but then to be fair, Muhammad hijab did put the caveat in there that, oh, well, is it really about faith? It's actually about allegiance to a state. Right, so okay, so there was some uncertainty where he lies on that principle. That said, I respect that move of his, but overall, I feel that justifying this, bringing in death penalties from America and things like that, are a poor argument, and they don't justify anything. And to say that, look, so there was this point where he said something about, look, without scripture, you guys would be nowhere, and Islam always gave sacred rights. There was a part where he spoke about voting, and he said, look, this is only 100 years old. Women have been given, the suffragettes movement and things like this, but Islam gave these rights 1400 years ago. Sure, look, these kind of things are nice, but look, you've got to be real. You are not, if we were talking in the time of the suffragettes, then that's fine. Islam has surpassed them, and it has given many more rights. But we are talking in 2019. Everybody that's alive today is not from that era of the suffragette movements and the civil rights movement and stuff like that. So to them, it doesn't matter. It's not about saying, aha, but we said that. Their point is, but what are you saying today? What is Islam saying today? Okay, it was great if you're saying it, 1400 years ago gave the right to vote, but why is it still backwards today? This is the question that they're going to have. They're not going to have this, oh, wow, that's awesome kind of thing. So I think we have to always keep it real. So there's no harm in mentioning these things when the time is right, but it really isn't something to be gloating over if you're going to be pushing rulings that are still out of sync and out of date. So that's my point there. And the other thing is there's a lot of blinding with terminology. So in the talk, like when you drop a lot of philosophical names, philosophical arguments, the kind of terminologies to do with them, things like this, it gives the impression that there's a lot being said here. But the truth is there isn't. And a lot of those things aren't really that relevant. And this was one of the problems that some people were doing when arguing against atheists and the arguments for God. They were doing the same thing. They were just mentioning constantly philosophical, and you've got the categorical imperative, and you've got this and you've got that, and they're mentioning a lot of philosophical terms which sound impressive to people who don't know what they are. They sound like, wow, I don't even know what that is. This person is so learned. But what it does to people who do know and to non-Muslims, it makes you look much weaker than you actually are. So if you are going to take on an argument, and has no relevance, very little relevance to the discussion. Like if I'm just discussing and I just keep throwing in jargon, I'd say, oh well, the ontological perspective here sheds it really challenges some angles of the categorical imperative, which then was really which was really quite fascinating when viewed from Hume's perspective of the scientific unpredictability, which then, when viewed in light of the quantum entanglement, I mean, what the hell am I even saying? I mean, it's not just about just throwing, just okay. It's like, my point is, take it by the horns and deconstruct it. If you are going to, don't just blind people with jargon that sounds quite impressive, but it has no relevance. It has no relevance because it just shows that you actually did a very poor job at actually dealing with the issue. So if you were to speak about liberalism, the real argument would be, how do we define it? Are there some fascist versions of liberalism today? And I agree that there are. Can they be dangerous? Yes, because fascism in any form can be dangerous. And to just present that, to say, make liberalism a separate religion, what does liberalism have to offer Islam, is a ridiculous. These are not separate. Like, Islam is a religion. Liberalism is a way of kind of thinking and an attitude. So it's an attitude that doesn't like authority being asserted on it. Now, how does that manifest itself? In many shapes and forms. So yeah, so overall, I felt it was a poor job at really taking down liberalism. There was a kind of straw man argument that was made, in the sense that it was all resting on John Locke, Hobbes and Hobbesian kind of philosophy, and Kantian philosophy, and then just taking that down and saying, well, look, they based it on God anyway, so don't you talk to me. And there was a lot of that. So yeah, so that was my thoughts on it. I hope maybe Muhammad Hijab might watch this and think about it, and yeah, I mean, maybe not. Chalo, you ain't get it then. We'll say it nevertheless. Cool, people. Whoa, is that the time, people? Is that the time? Right, let's take a quick look as right, so let's take a quick look at some Masala segment, people. Masala segment. So we've got, what have we had going on? There was, right, so with the Hasanat case, right, we've had some developments. It's quite interesting, quite fascinating. And the developments were that Rukhsana Ji, Rukhsana Ji has come out and fully, with a kind of back support, fully thrown her husband, catapulted him under the bus. She said, I was completely brainwashed by this guy, and I, have no idea. He just completely controlled everything, and he's a wretched human being. Wah. Now, I don't know whether this is some kind of, if this is some kind of a plot that's being co-conspired, then fair enough. If not, then Hasanat. Hasanat has been stabbed in the heart, people, by love. Betrayal. Ishq kamina. This is what's going on, people. Ishq kamina. Shah Rukh Khan was right all along. Ishq kamina. Right, but this is the problem. This is the problem when we don't take heed, when we still go ahead. So she has fully thrown him under the bus. She said, well, I don't know. He's to blame. He took care of all of this money and everything. Ask him. He's completely wretched. He belongs in the pits of hell. Right. So I guess that's that. There was something else as well before we go. I'll see if I can bring this up. Somebody sent me a clip. I'm gonna try and bring this up. Right. Let's see. This clip, people, was. Do you know my brothers and my sisters? This is a. Right. So this is a guy. I don't know this guy too well, but Abu Taymiyyah. But I want you to listen to this clip, right? If we can hear this. All right, let me just put the volume up. Deficiency in Tawheed. This is more what? Do you know my brothers and my sisters? This is a deficiency in Tawheed. This is more worse than a man having zina with his mother. Wait. The question is, can you say I swear on my mum's life? Do you know my brothers and my sisters? This is a deficiency in Tawheed. This is more worse than a man having zina with his mother. So saying I swear on my mum's life is worse than having sex with your mum. Oh my God. Yes Allah. Yes Allah. Oh. I don't know, man. It's like, because when I heard that, I was like, what? What? How? On what scale? What's it? You know, on the scale of how bad things are, where do we put having sex with your own mom? Do we put it just right there at the beginning? Is it like just right beneath having a strong headache? It's like where do we put this? This is worse than having sex with your own mum. I mean, how is that? I'm thinking, you know, my scale where that would be up there with, like, I don't know, like triggering another Chernobyl nuclear disaster. I'm thinking, have I got the scale the wrong way round? Is it like those people who drive too slowly when approaching a left-hand junction, and then they're a special breed, and then after that, at that scale, those who have sex with their own mothers, and after that, those who still don't drive off when the lights have turned green. I mean, I don't know, how does this scale work? Are we? I'm thinking. I'm like the only one. Everybody else is like, mashallah. 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 I'm thinking, wait, I'm sure saying I swear my mom's life it doesn't quite feel on par or above actually having sex with my own mom. I mean, what a sick and disturbing, what an abominable concept. God, honestly, I had to check my own ethics standards and morality and think, like, have I got this the other way around? Is this supposed to be like triggering another Chernobyl is right at the bottom? That's just like a given. And then it's like, I don't know, man. Well, I thought I'd share that with you guys. People, it's been awesome. Shukran for your patience. Shukran for staying on. Guys, right, till next week, I'll leave you to it. Have an awesome week. Take very good care of yourselves. If I do have that discussion, I'll post it on Facebook or I'll let it be known. So do watch this space. Remember me in your kind du'as, right? And remember, above all people, keep smiling, keep laughing, spread love and humanity. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.